See, the way it's written, Gabe, they make it seem like only those two guys. However, we got to go through the contenders and then try to make it make sense for WrestleMania. Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll start with LA Knight, which we'll talk about a little bit later on in the show. We'll talk about LA Knight. Hot as fire. He hasn't necessarily been set aside, but there's other attractions. Here comes Randy Orton, and here comes CM Punk. And it makes it very interesting. Going back to your original point about the fall and winter months, you want to have a big splash in the fall, especially with networks involved. Especially for the last 10, 15 years in professional wrestling. You want USA, you want Turner, you want them to be like, wow, this is really great for October. Something against Major League Baseball, something against the NFL that people can glom onto and be able to watch. And in December, it just kind of falls off until you get to January. Things have changed, though, in that regard, because there's some hot acts there. So if I take the field, I'm taking an LA Knight.
Yep.
I'm taking a red hot Drew McIntyre, who's a heel, clearly. And we are forgetting about Damian Priest. We're forgetting about Priest. I mean, he is senior money in the bank. I mean, he's not carrying that case around for a rib. He's going to have to cash in at some point. We also got to think about Gunther as well as Intercontinental Champion. So there's some guys there. So, I mean, it's very difficult. Everything is centered around Punk and Cody. But then, as you guys talked about last week in my absence, I mean, there's a Randy Orton that's still lurking. You know, he wants his comeuppance against the Bloodline. However, I'm sure he'd like to get in the title picture as well.
Yeah, so I think you can throw Jey Uso in there. I think maybe we don't have a lot on Sami Zayn this week, but Sami apparently he was written off of television after his match with Drew McIntyre. Maybe he returns at the Royal Rumble, and he's somebody that you could throw into that picture. There's a lot in the field, but it seems like they're really focusing on these two. And the thing that I'm concerned about is already here in December, it seems kind of obvious that we're going Punk versus Seth, Cody versus Roman at WrestleMania. And if those two things have already been set in stone, it kind of seems like one of those two guys has to end up being the winner of the Royal Rumble and go on and main event at WrestleMania. That's the only concern I have. The one thing you bring up with having, senior money in the bank lurking is if he cashes in on Seth, Punk versus Seth doesn't need a championship. Like, it doesn't need a championship belt. So then you could have, again, if you go into the Royal Rumble or even earlier in the night, if Seth is defending his world championship, if you have Damian Priest cash in at the Royal Rumble, that opens the door for a number of different or new challengers that could potentially win the Royal Rumble. But if we end the Royal Rumble with those two as the champs, then it kind of seems obvious that Punk or Cody has to be the winner. And Cody just won it last year. So then a returning CM Punk is your Royal Rumble winner. At least that's how it looks to me in the middle of December.
Here's something that you and I and Burroughs have not talked about. So do you really want to see Cody against Roman too?
No. Nope.
Okay. Yeah, I think we know what that match looks like. And again, the same story I say almost every week on Good Karma Wrestling is you got to fight the Bloodline. That's Solo Sikoa. That is going to be Jimmy Uso. That's Paul Heyman. And I'm just saying, like, here we are in December talking about this, mid-December. Does Cody feel hot to you? I mean, taking on Nakamura, and by the way, interesting finish, by the way, the disqualification finish. It was not a real finish. It was a DQ. That's a way to just keep that feud hot. Okay, so he beats Nakamura. So that doesn't seem like Cody is as hot going into Royal Rumble or WrestleMania season as it did last year.
He's going to win the feud with Nak, and Nak still feels hotter to me. Because Nakamura just, he feels fresh and new, and what they've done with him, even though, again, he lost his previous against Seth Rollins. He lost that feud, but just Nakamura feels fresh and new and entertaining where, I mean, Cody's still over, don't get me wrong, but I just don't feel like he's that hot baby face that's ready to take on the Bloodline. And I know they teased Punk and Seth Rollins, but I think you could do Punk versus Roman. I think would be and Punk wouldn't go over, I don't think, in this scenario, but that's how you get Punk his real main event for WrestleMania.